All right, so looking again, like we said, this seems to be a 1-to-1 with Sam D. Sherman's list. The only reason I can say that with almost 100% confidence is because I've been playing this list myself at locals ever
Right,
since
nice.
his performance, and it's been a ton of fun. So definitely excited to see how it performs here against Kha'Zix, as now we get to look over at Kha'Zix list. What are you thinking about this Kha'Zix list as you take a look over it?
Yeah, it's always interesting to see what people include of with one-ofs. As we saw with the Rengar list, there were no one-ofs. It was all twos,
Mm-hmm.
threes. It was a very slim deck, right? Or a very like clear, concise game plan. But here with the
Yeah.
Kha'Zix, Chaos always has a couple of those little tricksy cards with hard bargains and gusts, just for those odd opportunities, especially when you have stacked decks to be able to pull the correct card for the correct situation. Same with Akshan from their body domain, able to take those gears like we were talking about for the Aurora matchups if they do come down the line. But overall, I think a fairly standard list here. It is always crazy to see those three Vexes in like random chaos lists, right? It's just such a good card to come out on turn two if you're going first. Just the deflect cost, and then also slowing your opponent down if you can get it to a battlefield. So, you know,
Yeah, and I'm seeing here in the chat someone say that June is actually the twice best of Kha'Zix, by the way. So this is a potentially a very skilled Kha'Zix pilot. So we'll get to see what is a well-versed Kha'Zix play into the top list as far as we've seen so far for Rengar in the Sam D. Sherman list. And I think what Kha'Zix has going for him more than anything is his signature spell. I think that signature
Mhm.
spell is just so immensely powerful right now that it's what really sets him apart from so many other legends. And it's kind of where the skill ceiling is most centered around, in my opinion, for Kha'Zix, is being able to make the most effective use out of that spell. And that's why we see the triple fizz as well. Obviously, having great synergy with a card like Starcross, which we also saw in a three of, but being able to reutilize your signature spell with fizz in a way that not a lot of other chaos decks can is something that really makes Kha'Zix a powerhouse to have to worry about once he gets online with those six spells. As we step into game number one, we see Emperor's Deus and Zon Warrens as our battlefields with a turn one pit rookie and a pass over to Kha'Zix.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this. This Zon Warrens is always a pretty standard first turn play when you're not sure what you're going to go into your matchup, and then we do see the Mr. Root come out for as a 2-drop and pass back over to the Rengar player. Very very standard openings and nothing too wild here. I think there was a lot of interesting talk online about Emperor's Dais recently about how it
Mm-hmm.
resolves. I don't know if you saw that too much as well, but there's for our viewers out there, what you can do is Emperor's Dais, when that goes off, you don't actually have to pay the cost to return it to hand, because the return to hand is like the cost, and that I believe it could the cost goes is you pay on resolution. You don't get the Sand Soldier if you don't pay the cost, but you can still return to hand, and it's really good in these Rengar decks. They'll let you, there's some niche situations where it can be used to return if you don't have that mana and you really need to be able to return something to your hand. So it's neat.
Yeah, it'll be cool to see if we see that implemented here into the game plan at all. Obviously, Rengar tends to pay the one a lot of times
Hmm.
because he'll already have a board established, and playing the Sand Soldier does trigger the Rengar ability to get
Of
a
course.
3+1. So you do end up making the Sand Soldier quite a few times. Plus, it gives you a body at that battlefield to re-ambush to on defense, should you be able to, with something like a Grim Apothecary or anything like that going forward. So typically, we'll most likely see it played as printed, as we just got rewound back in time.
Yeah, we're time travelers now. We're gonna be able to predict everything. They're gonna play. They're gonna pay two and play a Mr. Root. I can feel it. I just know this is what's gonna happen somehow. But yeah, we'll see. So I
Okay.
think also what we saw was the pit rookie came back to hand, and those on play effects as well. Like they were able to buff the sand soldier, making them up to 3 might, which is a little bit good if there was a 2 drop on the field. So just some interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there, chat, but it's odd.
Yeah, that was weird. What's also funny about this matchup is they're both playing a triple fair, irresistible Fey folk.
Yeah.
So both having the capability to pull each other's units in and have like this standoff with their Fey folks and see who can more effectively utilize ambush in tandem with it, which
Hmm.
I think favors Rengar typically in just the amount of uh, um, uh, ambush units that he has
Right.
access to, but Kha'Zix does play quite a few spell tricks, not only the punch first, but also Grim Resolve, and then obviously the Star Cross, like we mentioned. So there's answers on both sides, which makes this matchup so interesting. Being that overlap in the body is going to see not a one to one like overlap in terms of the cards they're playing. I don't believe we saw a pit rookie for Kha'Zix or
Hmm.
anything like that, but there is quite a few overlap cards in the form of Punch First, Challenge, Fey Folk, maybe a few others. So as we see now, we're starting off with the Conquer at the Zon Warrens for Kha'Zix, getting that 2 XP from Mr. Root, heading over to the battlefield. Now the discard will be Star-Crossed, and now Kha'Zix has that ability to bring the unit back thanks to his legend ability, going to do so now. Spend that 2 XP and bring Mr. Root back to safety and deploy one of those 3 Vex Apathetics that you mentioned earlier.
Hmm. Yeah, I always think it's really interesting. I think new as a when I was learning the game, especially with new Vexes, I would have been tempted to play that Vex at that battlefield and just kind of leave Mr. Root there. And obviously, as a if you are not playing Kha'Zix and can't bring your units back, knowing when to play that Vex at a battlefield and not is really important. With our Filth, our Rengar player, they could have moved in their pit rookie and punched first or done something just to get rid of that Vex. And then you are able to then still ambush once you've got rid of that Vex. So seeing what they have on board and being very cautious about how you use those resources is really important.
100%. And having the one rune up for themselves could have threatened punch first as well. But obviously, this early in the game, you don't really want to be put
Hmm.
into that
Yeah, for
corner
sure.
where you have to use it on defense. And if they have the ability to get over it, you're just kind of really far behind in your rune tempo and your board. Losing the Vex would be really unfortunate. This early on. So you're definitely right about the choosing when to deploy it to a battlefield and when to just play it to base and be able to send it in as an attacker, since even as it's attacking, its effect is live since it only needs to be at a battlefield. So even when it attacks, you can't have your Rengar opponent really like defensively ambush in their orange Rengar, the trophy hunter, because the stun will go live. So can
Hmm.
force a push in that scenario if the Kha'Zix isn't able to get over the Rengar. But typically that's not how you want to be using the Rengar ambush. So it's fair to just play her in base and use her as an attacker that kind of disables defensive ambushes. As now we're going into Kha'Zix's turn, leading off with the sabotage just to
Oh
see
my God,
exactly what we
two
do
punch
have
first.
to play around. And yeah, 2 punch first, and then a Thrill of the Hunt already in
Hmm.
hand as well. So more than likely, we see Thrill of the Hunt
Hmm.
be the choice here out of the 3 options available. Get that signature spell away, and knowing that there's 2 punch first at the ready, it's a little bit easier to play around them. And even though 2 punch first is a lot to overcome, that's also a lot of runes to spend. So we'll see how Rengar chooses to utilize these punch firsts going forward.
Kha'Zix, I think, is in a good spot too. When you see these punch first, it means that you're feel a lot safer trying to win a battlefield with just like +1 might or +2 might, because then they have to commit such a big spell to overcome such a small discrepancy, and you end up being just a little bit ahead in usually in card advantage. So I find that's something you want to just be wary of here, right? Like they can throw the Vex apathetic against a 3 might unit, and it's 4 to 3, and now they use punch first. Maybe Vex isn't the one you want to throw away to that. I think, of course, but as just as an example. And so then they throw that punch first out, and now you have it gone, dealt with. You know that it was there, and then you can keep moving on with the game. Unlike where you have, I think the Rengar, they have Grim Resolves as well, right? Where it's just that +2 might, but that feels a lot better to use when they need to. But we do actually see one of the punch firsts being gone, which I'm
Oh
surprised.
wow,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, Grim Resolve is actually +3 might, but it
Right.
only had action speed, not reaction speed, so a
Mm.
little less useful in terms of being able to respond to something like that. But it is going to be a punch first, like you said. So one going to the bottom. Now having knowledge of the thrill of the hunt is, I guess, enough for June to feel like they can play around it as we see Vex come away to the dais to get that conquer up to 2. And now Mr. Root coming into Zon Warren's going to generate us that 2 XP again, and more than likely we'll see the ambush to follow as we tap 4, recycle a purple. It will be our chosen champion coming out to play for an additional 2 XP thanks to the solo defending pit rookie, as well as a 2 might buff. So we're attacking over here now at 7-2. So that punch first will just bring it to a tie. So I guess that might have been part of the decision in
Mm.
why we chose the punch first with the sabotage. I guess June may have been a tad bit concerned that Rengar was willing to double punch first just to win this combat, which may have been the case. You never, I guess we'll never know, but the
Well,
Conquer
they did.
does in any way go through, and it was a discard of Starcross for the Zon Warrens.
Yeah, and they only have three body runes. They couldn't have actually punched first twice, so I'm still surprised by that a
Ah,
little bit.
yeah.
But even the like, yeah, getting the trade off there, I'm not sure if it was worth it. Like because punch first is such an important card to hold on to. So these are the small decisions that I think really make the difference between an amazing player and like a good player. You know, you can play that punch first, get your trade. You know, you're trading 2 cards for 2, but our Rengar player is valuing that punch first for later rather than now, and I think it's an interesting call. I'm not 100% sure of the right way to do it. These are the pros, but it's definitely interesting to see and try to figure out why they're doing those specific things. We'll have to keep an eye on if that punch first gets a lot more value later.
Yeah, now we're looking at the Kha'Zix activation, going to be
Hmm.
spending 2 XP once again. So bringing our Kha'Zix back to safety in the base, leaving Vex apathetic alone at the dais, not fearing any ambushes with her there, but having 2 3 might units already established on board. This is where we can start to see what Rengar is so good at doing in attacking the Vex Apathetic. One of the cards that many people wrote Rengar off because of the power that Vex Apathetic provides in stopping ambushes. But Rengar able to kind of sidestep that in being able to play, as we see here, the Determined Sentry just as a 1-mana 1/1 that will come in and give a buff thanks to Rengar and bring our little units up just a tad, and that's all you need to make your opponent be forced to utilize some resources if they want to get over, as we see that happen now with the double Determined Sentry come down to give a +2 buff to our already buffed Sand Soldier to bring it up to 5, attack over our 4 Might Vex Apathetic, which is going to buy a Grim Resolve, of course, tapping our Kha'Zix player out. So no more tricks to have to deal with now, as that punch first that we were left with in hand after the sabotage does already come out to play on this Sand Soldier. So we are going to be able to take that Vex Apathetic down rather early, which is great for a Rengar. Still having 5 runes up means that now they can threaten the Rengar Trophy Hunter on the following turn on defense, as our Kinku Monk walks into the Zon Warrens for the Conquer and gets us up to 5-3. So in a pretty good spot for Kha'Zix so far. Or sorry, Rengar.
Yeah, and I think looking at that turn, like we were saying, what value do we get out of that punch first for holding it versus killing the Kha'Zix? And I think this is so much more valuable for the Rengar. We're able to move in, get rid of the Vex, which is just destroying a lot of the Rengar's tempo. We're not able to play those ambush units. We're not able to like use those combat tricks or like hand creatures that have ambush. And I think that's really, really important as we move forward here. And also, we got rid of a Grim Resolve, right? So and our Sand Soldier, not really card. So I think we traded up to right like one card, the Punch First, for two cards, the Vex and the Grim Resolve. So overall, I think that Punch First got a lot more value being used there rather than just trading previously for the Kha'Zix before. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And now we saw the hidden card come down at the dais as well, which we know
Mhm.
is Pike. June should
Right.
know as well, obviously, sniping the hand earlier with a sabotage. Saw the Pike in there, the only hidden unit available. So more than likely going to avoid going over there until they're sure they can overcome both the Sand Soldier and the Pike, which of course with the expenditure of a red rune will come in for 4 might and then trigger Rengar for an additional might. So a surprise, essentially free 5 might defender available for Rengar at the dais. It's going to be a little bit of a tall order to come over the top of, as we'll see the Kha'Zix be able to take Zon Warrens rather easily. And this is one of those scenarios where you would want to see the Void Assault finally come out to play, as Void Assault can start to manipulate these combats as one goes to the bin, actually, as it for the discard of Zon Warrens. Interestingly enough, obviously we said earlier that that can be reutilized with a card like Fizz, but interesting to see it be discarded here before, as opposed to being played in a situation where you can more than likely force out the defense of the defensive ambush of the Rengar with the Void Assault, but just another apathetic
Oh,
coming
there's
down
another one.
instead. Oh, and another one. Wow, so it is coming out after all.
Yep. Yeah, this is I was also wondering about this. Yeah, when they discarded that card, I was really surprised. We also saw them discard two Starcross, so I my assumption was that they had a Fizz in hand, and that they're okay to throw some of these important spells away, knowing that they have a Fizz or two. I don't think we've seen the Kha'Zix players' hand too well here with the cameras. I haven't been paying as close enough attention as I should, and so that was my assumption. But just having the second Void Assault, this I think is a really key turn. We're gonna have to figure out what we want to bring into this battlefield, and it's really interesting. So this is scary to me. We bring the sentry against the Vex so that we can kill one of these sentries, just get them off the board, and then we also move the Kha'Zix over to get that the +2 from fighting alone again. Like you said, the Pike is going to represent so much might here. It's now what, 9 to 3, 5. It's close,
Yeah,
right?
it should be 8, but
Yeah.
this does, depending on where he puts the Pride Stalker buff, which he will put it onto the Pike. So it is 8 over here, but notably, Pike also does get stunned here because of Vex Apathetic.
Right.
So the Pike is not dealing combat damage here, but it will still potentially push the Kha'Zix back if Kha'Zix cannot get over the top. Right now, it is 9 to 8, but Inferna coming down is going to make that
That's not
10
+2.
to
Yeah, there
8
we
or
go.
10 to 9, thanks to the her 1 might herself plus the
Hmm.
1 might buff from Pride Stalker. So
Yeah.
now it is 10 to 9 more, I believe, if my math is correct. So Kha'Zix going to
Hmm.
need a little bit extra to get over the top, which it doesn't look like we have access to, unfortunately, as they seem to be moving to damage distribution. Is going to elect to take out the Sand Soldier plus the Pike and leave just Inferna by her lonesome. But that is the chosen champion going down to the bin after utilizing a Void Assault as well, and then
Hmm.
discarding another copy on top of that. So 2 Void Assaults already gone, and now we can resume the showdown over at the Zon Warrens, which is a determined sentry versus a Vex Apathetic.
Yeah, they seem
Oh,
to be a
I'm
little bit
sorry. This,
confused here. Yeah,
yeah,
the
this,
Inferno sticks around. The Kha'Zix just bounces back because, like you said, the Pike was stunned. So I
yeah,
think
didn't do
this
damage. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this all ends up being okay. The Inferno still sticks around on the field, and then, like you said, we'll resolve this. But they seem to be a little bit. Oh, oh, the Vex was also, yeah. They were okay. They were a bit mixed up with
Yeah, I
what's
think
going on there. Yeah.
there's a little bit of confusion. And these ambush decks can do that to you. Start
Mhm.
like everybody's playing cards on each other's turns and lose a little bit of track of what's going on. And Vex Apathetic throwing an extra, kink in the chain there.
Mhm.
And we got to where we wanted to be. Kha'Zix answered those 2 units at the dais, did not get the conquer, unfortunately, did just get pushed back, but is still
Hmm.
alive to fight another day. And Vex won her fight against the Determined Sentry pretty easily. I should hope so. Over at the Zon Warrens is now we are on even point threshold for Kha'Zix, it being at 4, but Rengar going to get that hold to 6 now, is able to threaten lethal next turn, as we might see this Determined Sentry come over the top of this Vex Apathetic this turn if Rengar can find a way to buff it up enough.
Yeah, I think you have to figure out what you want to do here. So we know, your the Kazakhs can't win this turn, right? They can get their 2 points, that's fine, to threaten lethal. And so do you try to hold them to 5 and then, make them think about if they want to conquer or not, which they will try to, or do you just play a lot of stuff in base and hope they don't? They've already, as they've shown, they've thrown away a couple void assaults, so they need a fizz to bring that back to like move around your units. So they're just going to. Oh, they actually, I think our Rengar player just passed here with a bunch up. So I wonder, right? They have their Rengar here, their champion unit available to play into one of these battlefields as necessary.
Yeah, Vex being on board at a battlefield still is going to present a problem for that Trophy Hunter ambush, but
Hmm.
that is still capable of going in and doing what we just did in the previous turn and being able to get enough might to simply have the hold essentially come through by pushing back the attacker. Although in this situation, Kha'Zix already sitting at 5 thanks to the buff from the legend ability, then will go to 7 off of its own triggered ability. So in that case, even if Rengar did ambush in, it would be 7-7, and that would then um, go the way of Kha'Zix, as the stun would from the Vex would cause Kha'Zix to get the kill and be able to win that combat. And we are seeing now the third copy of Void Assault. So he had all 3 in hand,
Oh,
and now
wow.
all 3 have been played. Void Assault came across to get that first +2 buff, which notably Kha'Zix does get this buff and trigger every single time a combat occurs where he is attacking or defending against a solo enemy unit. So currently already at that 7 might threshold, and if they were to be attacked again in a 1v1 from something like, say, this Rengar, it would trigger once again and bring it up to 9. So heads up play to use the Void Assault to force that first trigger through against the Inferna, and then be able to trigger it once again if Rengar did decide to try to fight for it, which they did not. Just ended up wasting, what was that, 6 runes they left open?
Yep. Yeah, that was too bad. I think that's what the Rengar player was looking for. Because yeah, if the Kha'Zix comes into attack and then you play your Rengar, you become the defender, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
and so if you are able to, even though you're stunned, if you push them back, I think you still get that point on your opponent's turn, and then you could hold the 8, right? So they were trying for, I think,
Exactly.
a cheeky play, but it didn't quite work out. Just you have to be a lot more wary when your opponent basically knows what you're going to do. They can play around it fairly easily, but we do just see that is this just game?
I believe that would just be game. Unless he didn't have the points recorded
He
correctly.
just, yeah,
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
it. Oh
He wasn't
no.
paying attention, I guess. Missed
Yeah.
out. Oh, he had double Thrill of the Hunted. So
Oh,
both
that's
players
tough.
having so many of their signature spells in their opening hand, and notably neither of which seeing any copies of Nidalee very early on to supplement their draw. Both players were down to 2 cards in hand there at the end, and becoming really scarce on resources and abilities to attack the current situation, as game 1 is going to go over to Kha'Zix on a double hold. So interesting development throughout that game from both players. We got to see a little bit of what both decks have to offer and how they approach.
Back into game number 2, the production here is yeah, it came up real fast. I think maybe that's why we had that weird
Yeah, when
rewind
we
earlier.
rewound in time. Yeah,
Yeah, they probably were just jumping back a little bit to make sure they had a bit of a recording planned out ahead of time.
a little bit of a buffer. Yeah, so Interesting to see now. We got to jump forward a little bit, skip a little bit of that sideboarding, and get right back into the action. As this time it'll be a turn one Fey Folk for our Kha'Zix player, which is what we mentioned in game number one of the key cards and body coming out of this new set. A card that's been making waves across multiple body decks. A very, very irresistible little Fey Folk, as he will pull in whatever he wants when he moves to a battlefield. And now on turn number 2, our Inferno is walking to the Star Spring and going to get a defensive stack deck from Kha'Zix and more than likely come away with a conquer on that Star Spring. Very middling early game so far, but it's hard to set up once you see that Fey Folk across the board. You're in this weird predicament where you obviously want to keep establishing board, keep progressing your game plan, but Irresistible Fey Folk really throws a wrench in that game plan, and being that it will move your units in ways that you weren't intending and kind of mess you up. And now we're seeing the Sabotage come across, and it'll be 3 spells and 1 unit revealed. A Gust, Grim Resolve, and Void Assault as the options for Sabotage to recycle to the bottom.
Yeah, and we do know, I was going to say, we don't have a lot of units here, which is good, I think, to note for the Rengar, right? There's not a lot of follow-up to a lot of these buffs, right? The Fey Folk can only do so much, but of course there is the Kha'Zix in the champion unit, champion zone as well as needed, but getting rid of one of these spells I think is going to be pretty important and really slow down the Kha'Zix's development. Getting rid of the Gust, getting rid of things that can return to hand. I'm a little bit surprised by this, but I wonder what the Rengar has that is a little bit more worried about this. They can't yeah, they can't play that on the. They didn't play that on the Inferno. Oh, they didn't have enough runes to play that on the Inferno. They chose not to. Instead, they played the stack deck. Maybe they got that with the stack deck. It'd be interesting to see.
Could be, yeah. Could have been the pick off the stack deck. The other interesting thing here with the Fey Folk, the Irresistible Fey Folk does move into the Forbidding Waste and become the attacker, and so what it pulls in will then be the surprise defender. And if it is alone, in the case of how Inferno is currently, that would be a -2 trigger going across. Obviously, leaving 3 runes up does kind of indicate that there is an ambush unit available to come to the rescue of our Inferno. More than likely, we will see something like a Grim Apothecary come across to save that. But obviously, or additionally, though, if Grim Apothecary comes down and were to, say, bounce that Inferno to hand, then the Apothecary would be a solo defender and also get that -2. So in a little interesting spot here, could see quite a few things come out from Rengar, and instead of actually trying to do any kind of shenanigans with the Forbidding Waste, we're just gonna walk straight into the Star Spring and then bring Kha'Zix out and trigger that +2 might and +2 XP.
Are they gonna? Do you think they're gonna bring back the Fey Folk? It doesn't look like they did. Because I'm interested to see, playing that Kha'Zix on that Star Spring, keeping the Fey Folk alive is really, really nice, and it's only 1 might, so the Inferno is going to be able to kill it if they want to. So I'm curious to see if they do bring that Fey. Yeah, there you go. They bring that Fey Folk back, and now it's that smug little guy that causes everyone so much pain is going to be around for another turn.
Yeah, and that's the power of this battlefield in particular, and these ambush decks is being able to ambush a unit there and then use the original attacking unit to go back to base and then be able to go across the other battlefield the following turn. So very strong utilization of Star Spring here, as Fey Folk gets to stick around and cause more problems for our Kha'Zix player going forward. And now we see the Kha'Zix ability being activated to bring Kha'Zix back to base. So after all is said and done, we have an empty board for our Rengar player. 1 point on the scoreboard, but 1 point across the way for Kha'Zix as well, who is sitting on an Irresistible Fey Folk and a Kha'Zix in board. So looking pretty good for Kha'Zix yet again.
Yeah, this is so difficult to play around because as soon as they're the Kha'Zix is in such a dominating position, being able to pull anything from base, and the Rengar player right now only able to really play one thing at a time of any substance, and so having that playing something to base, it's just going to get killed next turn unless they have some kind of trick. They're leaving up one though, so they're kind of threatening the punch first, and I think it's a good thing to threaten. Just kind of make sure the Kha'Zix stays on their toes, and decides not to move in with the irresistible Feyfolk and try to get rid of that Kaisa. But we do know they also have the Vex in hand, right? And so being able to play that out is and stun anything from coming in might also be useful. Oh, I see the
Yeah,
Void
now the
Assault coming across,
Void
right?
Assault. Nice. So Void Assault coming in. Gonna start us another showdown at the Forbidding Waste. This time, Kha'Zix will be the attacker, getting the +2 buff, +2 XP, and now the -2 to our Kaisa, bringing her down to 2. Could elect to throw in the punch first to go up to 7 and be over by 1, but with 4 runes at the ready for June, could just throw a Grim Resolve in and walk away with some bonus XP and a kill anyways. So electing not to spend any additional resources on what they believe to be already a foregone conclusion, as Kaiser is sent to the bin and the Conquer is had, and now we'll just set up our Vex Apathetic in base once again and pass it over. No need to feel the pressure to go to 4 on this turn and move up that Feyfolk. Rather, just keep it in base and keep it ready to pull anything out of base as needed. As you said earlier, this is a very difficult spot for Rengar, being able to not play multiple units and develop a big board in the base means that they can't really play around the irresistible Feyfolk effectively. If they're only able to play one mid-range or even big unit like their Rengar to base, that just opens them up to being pulled in by our irresistible Feyfolk, as now Darius will be the one big unit played. Definitely a strong unit, but still going to run into some issues with this irresistible Feyfolk, more than likely, as now it'll be a challenge coming down. This is going to trigger our Darius to stand and gain the +2 and be able to move in, as well as take out that Kha'Zix. So pretty good play, but now we're tapped out, and Kha'Zix more than likely should have the tools to be able to dispatch this Darius over at the Star Spring.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that you kind of mentioned going up to 3 points, being worried about going to 4 and taking a battlefield. Going up to those 4 points, that kind of set this Kha'Zix back a whole turn basically. Before, right now, they're kind of in similar point totals, right? They're both 3 and 2, so getting up to that even point threshold is really important. And moving up and just getting that extra point, even if you are throwing away like your Feyfolk a little bit, is really important, especially when the Rengar has nothing in base. Putting a Vex Apathetic on that battlefield too, just to protect it or move back the Feyfolk, it could have been really, really impactful, I think, here, and prevented this way of going about it. Of course, the challenge could have come out, killed the Vex Apathetic anyways, and moved in and gone through there. But there's a few more resources gone, so lots of different lines, different plays here, and this is the one the Rengar has decided to go with, making a very, very big, formidable force of Darius. And we'll see what the Rengar wants to commit to try and take this battlefield back.
Yeah, I think you're right in regards to how the Vex Apathetic could have been used as a deterrent there. Being on an empty board state, there wasn't really much that the Rengar player could have done to deal with the Vex. That turn, obviously, like you said, challenge was available, but being at the battlefield already means that if Darius did come down, he would come down stunned and be able to move. So even if he did challenge the Vex away, would ready but still not be able to move. So I think there was an argument to be made, like you said, for going up to that even point threshold on the previous turn and then deploying the Vex straight to the battlefield, being that Rengar had nothing deployed already. Could have been in a pretty comfortable spot, I think, but all things considered, it still looks like they're in quite the comfortable spot, as now Rengar is once again on an empty board, and we are going to see Vex sticking around at a battlefield, as Kha'Zix's ability is activated to grant a buff to that apathetic, and it's looking really, really grim for our Rengar player this early into game number 2.
Yeah, I find as soon as if Kha'Zix is able to get down Fade Folk early, and you as a player are not able to get out enough threats to be able to withhold that, or have a big, if the Kha'Zix player gets a little bit too greedy and pulls something over that they shouldn't have, it can just be, if unless that kind of happens, then the other player is really behind in tempo, and it's so hard to catch up. Yeah, the little Fey bro, someone is he is very annoying and very cute, and it's very difficult to deal with. And now with the Vex here too, right? Like, there's not really too much that our Rengar player can do. They're just gonna have to develop in base, something that they didn't do last game, where they left the Rengar up, but you have to against this Vex. So we're gonna Kha'Zix is gonna hold up to 7, and at this point they're ahead on so much card advantage. They're ahead on so many points. They can just pull back, play some units, and you know go for an all-out attack next turn.
Yeah, we could see with that extra Fey Folk in base as well, the go for broke and just go in and pull that Rengar
Right.
into one of these battlefields and then just take it out. There is no ambush that couldn't be had to come into the rescue with Vex sitting there. So could see some punch firsts come down, but obviously Kha'Zix has the capability to have some punch firsts of their own, but cards in hand looking a little bit rough, as most of our cards are on the board currently. A lot of units being played down, not a lot of combat tricks in hand, potentially. Only looks like 2 cards in hand for Kha'Zix versus the 4 for Rengar. So a little bit more options to work with for Rengar, but still being at 7-2 right now feels like a massive mountain to climb. And I think the pressure is all sitting on our Rengar player to find the path to victory. Kha'Zix has kind of got a few ways to go about this. Like you said, can just pull back and do some more developing and just go for the double conquer next turn, or choose to try and force the issue now, as it looks like that's what we're going to do. We're going to move our Lucian in over to the Star Spring and now take the Rengar over to the Forbidding Waste, just to strand him there. Actually, interesting play. So just
Mhm.
sacrificing the Fey Folk just to give Rengar a free conquer, so a charity point, feeling that confident in their ability to win. Says, here, take a free point on my turn. You can come over here and conquer this, but now you're going to be stuck there. So have fun getting that Rengar over to the Star Spring and breaking this hold. You won't be able to buff it up and attack in, and you can't Thrill of the Hunted over either. So pretty interesting play here coming down for our Kha'Zix player. I like the line. There are some outs maybe potentially, but this is pretty strong. I think we might see this game wrapping up here.
Yeah, I really like I really like that play. I was a little bit scared when they first started moving stuff around, like, just hold back. You can just win next turn, it's fine. But I think this is a pretty interesting play. Yeah, like you said, you strand the Rengar, you make it very hard. Thrill the Hunt will take that Rengar and play it, but then I think does Vex still stun it though?
Yes,
Yeah,
Vex will
Vex still
still stun
stuns
it.
it. Yeah, so okay, it bounced back. Yep.
He's just doing it to get it back to the base so that it will ready and be able to attack at the Star Spring next turn.
Yeah,
So
that's so
really
funny. Yeah.
weird. We saw some interesting play lines from both players, and that's the
Hmm.
thing that these two decks do to one another. These mortal enemies of the jungle, the
Hmm.
the alien versus predator matchup. We have now the predator player coming away with a interesting utilization of Thrill of the Hunt, basically just a expensive flash being used in this circumstance so that they can come in and attack the Vex next turn. But still so many runes up on defense, but only 1 card in hand. So there's a potential here that we could break this Vex finally and get the ability to ambush in once again. But still, the board state is in massive favor of Kha'Zix, and it's still Kha'Zix's turn. So it's not even over yet. We're going to just utilize Void Assault to re-strand the Rengar once again. What a crazy turn of events we've seen this turn.
Hmm. Yeah, this was yeah, that Kha'Zix really just is trying to throw all the resources to get that Rengar stranded, keep the Vex apathetic at the battlefield so that it can't. Some people in chat were saying you can't do this, can't play it to the battlefield, but they, what had happened here, I believe, is that they thrilled the hunted, the Rengar to the Starstring battlefield with the Vex. The Vex stuns the Rengar because it came back into play from Thrill the Hunt, and so therefore, because the Vex is defending, the Rengar got bounced back into base, and so it didn't thrill the hunt to their own base. They thrilled the hunted to the battlefield and got stunned and pulled back into base. Just for clarification for anyone watching out there.
Yeah, good clarification there. Some questions in chat about that interaction. Yeah, Thrill of the Hunt is only able to take you to the battlefield, and unfortunately, after all of those tricksy shenanigans, nothing was enough to get our Rengar player across the finish line, as victory is going to be going over to June on Kha'Zix for our first round of regional qualifier, Hartford.